to us. ARE 215, that is the history of Islamic civilization and the religion. This is our next lesson that we have. During our lesson, we were looking at what is Islam as a religion, and then we looked at Prophet Muhammad, and we looked at the contentious issue about the Caliphate, that is after the death of Prophet Muhammad, and we concluded that the issue was solved, and Abu Bakr was chosen as the first Orthodox Caliph. And when we are looking at the issue of the Caliphate, we are looking at the first four Orthodox Caliph, and then there is the Umayyad Dynasty, and later we will look at the Abbasid Dynasty. Now, we are continuing with the first four Orthodox Caliphs. In our last lesson, we looked at Prophet Abu Bakr, who was the first Orthodox Caliph, and we looked at some of the achievements that he had in his reign, and we saw that he achieved some of them, and he was on the forefront to ensure that Islam has penetrated to the regions that had issues of aristocracy and maybe rebellion. Now, Abu Bakr, as the first Caliph, died after short illness, and there was need for the second Caliph who will lead Muslims and ensure that the Islam as religion it penetrates to other regions and also spreads, just like Prophet Muhammad had prophesied, and his wish was that Islam would go to other regions of the world. Now, the second person that we are going to discuss is Umar. So in this lesson, we are going to examine the reign of Umar, the second Orthodox Caliph after Abu Bakr. Now, we have some of the objectives that we have in our class today. One of them is that by the end of this lesson, we should be able to examine the reign of Caliph Umar and assess the main achievements of his reign. Did he have some of the achievements in his reign? And what struck or what was peculiar during his reign? And that is where we start off our lesson. Now, Umar was the second Caliph, and he took over from the reign of Caliphate after the death of Abu Bakr. Umar was one of the Prophet's most trusted companions, so he was always with the Prophet Muhammad, and he was one of the most trusted people who were working and even propagating for Islam as a religion. He was related to the Prophet, that is Umar. He married the Prophet's daughter called Hafsa, and he was a person of simplicity and devotion of duty, that he was in the forefront to ensure that what Prophet Muhammad had, or what visions Prophet Muhammad propagated for Islam, he was there to ensure that his wishes are adhered to. So he led a very sacred life, and in his talking, he was with a lot of eloquence, and he liked oratory, poetry, and he was a man of valor. So he was a person who knew who he was and what he stood for. So in his judgment and opinions, he displayed soundness of mind and sagacity. That is, some of his opinions were or became religious tenets. And some of these opinions that he had, one of them is that he suggested about the disposal of the prisoners of the Battle of Badr. That was one of his opinions, and it became a religious tenet. Another one was the observation of Buddha by Muslim ladies. He was the one who introduced the issue about the hijab, and also he did not want death prayers to be committed or to be said during the burial of a Munafiq who was called During his reign, there were some of the battles that he had, just like we saw at the reign of Abu Bakr. There are some of the battles that he had, and we see that he was very conquerors in nature. There is the Battle of Qadisiyah in 636 CE, which led Muslims to conquer entirely large Persian army. And they outnumbered 4 times the Muslim force. That is one of the battle that his army conquered. Also during Umar's reign, the siege of Damascus that had started during the reign of Abu Bakr was also completed. During the reign of Abu Bakr, we saw a battle where the people of Damascus were battling with the people from the side of Abu Bakr, and we see that during the reign of Umar, that is where this battle or this siege ends. That is in 635 CE. There was a commander called Khalid bin Walid who made a treaty with the residents of Damascus. He was on the forefront to ensure that this battle or this siege that was ensuing or going on between the people of Damascus and the people who were coming from the side of Abu Bakr and Umar had been solved. So the siege of Damascus was followed by the Battle of Fal, in which the Roman forces were defeated. So it means that it was a win for the Muslim or the Umar people. So in general, we've looked at his reign. So the lesson has examined the reign of Umar, the second Caliph. Notably, there are so many achievements during his reign. And we see that during his reign, the expansion of Islam was contributed, where we see that through these battles, they were able to conquer and even spread the gospel which Prophet Muhammad had propagated. So there is some activities that you, as a student, you must be able to do, and I believe that you'll tackle these activities at your own time. There's a question there where you are asked to discuss Umar's name according to Muslim tradition is the greatest in early Islam after that of the Prophet Muhammad. You are asked to discuss it and then comment, analyze the trends in the expansion of the Muslim empire during the reign of Caliph Umar. So during the reign of Umar, we see so many achievements, and One of them is that Islam as a religion was able to expand. So before his death, the death of Umar, he appointed an electoral body which composed of very respected companions of the Prophet to nominate a successor. Now we see that just like Abu Bakr, he thought about his reign after his death. So he tries to see who will take over after him. That is where we go. That after the meeting between those people who were chosen, it was agreed that Uthman will be the next Caliph. So the third Caliph is Uthman. Uthman also was married to the Prophet's daughter, there is Ruqayyah, and after she died, after Ruqayyah's death, Uthman married Kulthum. That is the Prophet's daughters. Now, the death of Umar created an opportunity for some conquered areas to repudiate the payment of jizya, where we see that the governor, Muawiyah, the governor of Syria, repulsed the Byzantine attacks in Syria. And we see that there is another siege again, which is propagated by Ayuba. So these are some of the activities which I believe we will discuss at your own time. Al-Fitna was a turning point in the history of Islam. Assess the validity of this statement. I believe we'll be able to discuss it as a discussion amongst yourself. Now, there is the reign of Ali, the fourth Orthodox Caliph, of which Ali is the fourth Orthodox Caliph, and I think I just made a mistake not to include it here in my slide, but I believe I'll discuss it in a summary. During his reign, what happened and what are some of his achievements during his reign. Ali is the last Orthodox Caliph, and after the death of Uthman, he was able to take over. So Ali is also one of the most trusted companions of the Prophet, and he was elected and given the majority votes that made him the next Caliph after the death of Uthman. Ali was the son of Abu Talib, that is the uncle of the Prophet Muhammad, and during his reign, he was able to ensure that political sanctity is observed, and also there are some of the battles, for example, the Battle of the Siffin, where we see that he conquered, and then he was able to have a loyalty from Muawiyah, and this led to the Battle of Siffin in 657. So we see that during his reign, there was a lot of quarrel between him and Muawiyah about the control areas where they had influence. And as we see at the end of it, we that attempts of Ali to have the Khatija, that is the teachers, this of the Khatijas, that is the first sect in Islam, a group of extreme Puritans who insisted that they were the only believers who believed in Prophet Muhammad. So he was able to, he tried to have the Khatijas back to his party, but we see it was very fruitless. And we see in 661, Ali was assassinated and he was killed. That is about the era of the last caliph, the last caliph. That is Ali, Uthman. That is the general view about the first four caliphs. And in summary, you can say that during the period of the four caliphate, there was a slight improvement about the spread of Islam as a religion, where through these battles we see that different caliph had a conquer, and he was able to ensure that Islam has spread to other parts of Arab. Now, want to look at the achievements of this caliph in general. We looked at the reign of Abu Bakr. We saw that he was very successful, ensured that the aristocracy, the rejection and the rebellion from those people who did not believe in Prophet Muhammad had been restored back to where they were supposed to be, and he ensured that there are more converts to Islam as a religion. During the reign of Umar, you've seen that he was very peculiar because his reign ensured that it had spread also, that is Islam religion, to the most interior parts of the Arab world. And that is another achievement during the reign of Caliph Umar. So we can say that during the first Orthodox Caliph, there was an achievement. So in this segment, we will look at the totality of all the achievements of the four Orthodox Caliphs, where we state that the four Caliphs were the rightly guided Caliphs, or the successors of the prophets. And also they were the Imams of the Muslim. When we were looking at Abu Bakr and Umar, we saw that during the absention, or when the Prophet was not around, they were the ones who led in the Friday prayers. So you can say that the Caliphs were also the Imams of the Muslims. They dedicated their lives to the cause of Islam and rendered a unique and outstanding service to the Muslim community. So they were on the forefront to ensure that the Islam and beliefs of Prophet Muhammad have been spread, and even they were propagating for more conversion to the religion, that is Islam. So the Caliph was the civil head of the state. As we clearly looked at some of them, they were chief commander of the army, where we saw that they were leading people to various battles, and we saw that in some occasions they became victorious. They were the protector of the people and the protector and defenders of religion, that is Islam. So the Caliph's objective, therefore, was to perpetuate Islam, just as I have mentioned earlier, and to see to it that the laws and the rules are followed. that if there is any aristocrat, if there is any person who wants to be rebellious, he was dealt with accordingly and ensure that the religion has gone further from where Prophet Muhammad left it. So the Caliph ensured that people observed the various religious injunctions. So in regard to the 5 daily prayers, they suppressed heresies, and also they defended Islam. That is, they led in the holy wars and issued ordinances and educated the masses in various occasions, especially during the prayers. With all these roles to perform, the office of the Caliph required the person of high moral integrity, and we've seen that those who were chosen to be Caliphs had a very high moral integrity. They were people of where they were termed to be very highly respected. They had high standard of piety and righteousness. Also, these people were very learned, like the Umar was a judge, and also he led in the prayers during Friday when the Prophet was not around. Abu Bakr was also another very resourceful person. Uthman and even Ali. These were people who were very close to the Prophet, and they were people who knew exactly what Prophet Muhammad wanted, or what Prophet Muhammad had prayed for. So these people are highly learned in the person. They were very learned. That is, they were very conversant with the hadiths that Prophet Muhammad gave, and also the Quran. So a caliph was a very very knowledgeable person in religious matters, and was very expected to lead people according to how the Quran stated, or the various hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad had stated. So the caliphs were the commander-in-chief of the army, just as I mentioned earlier, and their duties were to look after the army and to arrange the distribution of the pay of the soldiers who had gone for various battles, and those people, the soldiers who were there to protect the people, to lead in prayers in mosques, to give khutbah on Friday, arrange the collection of revenues, and keep proper stock of the things collected. So there was the issue of integrity and transparency, maintain law and order. They look after the moral conduct of the people, where they stress that for a Muslim, you must be able to do what the Prophet had stated before he died. And also to punish people accordingly using the Sharia law, and also arrange the proper distribution of the spoils of war amongst the soldiers. So those were some of the roles of the caliphs. And as we have looked at them, we can say that they were on the forefront to ensure that there was security, there was distribution of food, there was welfare, amongst other things. So in general, we can say that during the reign of the 4 caliphs, there was so much to note down, including government, where we saw that they ran the government so well, administration work, judiciary, law, public works, and education. So they were the people who would bring together every aspect of the society, and we can clearly say that the 4 caliphs acted as the supreme heads of the state in their respective periods, and also were in order according to how the Prophet, that is Prophet Muhammad, had dreamt of or had thought of. So that is the general or the summary about the achievement of the 4 Orthodox Caliphs. Now, I said earlier that the issue of the caliphate was divided into 3 periods. That is the period of the first 4 caliphs. The second one is the Umayyad Dynasty. Now, after the reign of the 4 caliphs, there was the issue of who will take power again. Now, the Umayyad, that is the people who came from the background where Prophet Muhammad came from, the Arab people, they decided to rule. That made a dynasty which is called the Umayyad Dynasty, and its consolidation under various rulers. So the outbreak of the Second World War came after the disagreement between various rulers in the Umayyad dynasty. Now, during the Umayyad dynasty, there were some of the achievements which were recorded, and those achievements are well articulated. And now, after the Umayyad people, that is the rulers, disagreed on various issues, there was the second war which came, and in this era we see that different individuals came up and tried to reign. There is Muawiyah, son of Abu Sufyan, who proclaimed the Caliph in Jerusalem in 660. And during this reign, we see that it was very imperialistic, dynastic, and dominated by Arab military aristocracy. So Muawiyah came and tried to lead them, and he led them for those from 660 CE, where we see that the Muslim empire expanded to North Africa under the command of bin Nafi, who established a colony at Girawan in Morocco. Now, Muawiyah went on to, he led until a certain time where he chose his son Yazid to be his heir, but this did not go well with some of the individuals like Hussein and Abdallah. They were on the forefront to ensure that Yazid, Muawiyah's son, will not take over. So what followed was the Battle of Kebala, in which the insignificant force of Hussein was massacred when they refused to surrender. Remember, it is between Hussein and Abdallah, who are now fighting against Yazid, who is Muawiyah's son. So the massacre of Hussein and his force at Kebala became the root of Shi'ism, the split that was born on the 10th of Muharram. These are people who came out and tried to have their own opinion about religion, that is Islam. Meanwhile, Abdallah Zubayyad continued to rouse the opposition against the Umayyads in the holy city. So Muawiyah II, that is after the death of Yazid and the withdrawal of the Syrian troops from Mecca, Abdullah Zubayr was proclaimed the Caliph in the Arabia and Iraq. Now you see here, there is Muawiyah, where Muawiyah chooses his son Yazid, and then there is a revolution or rebellion between from Hussein and Abdullah, and where we see there is a very bad massacre. And later, after the death of Yazid, Abdullah Zubayr was chosen to be the Caliph in Arabia and Iraq. Now the issue about the Caliphate is still going on. So in 1968, with the help of the Caliphs, Marwan bin Hakam, that is the cousin of Uthman, who was the third Caliph, and formerly his Secretary of State, became the founder of Mawalid, the branch of the Umayyad Dynasty. Now, the legitimacy of Abd al-Malik to the Caliphate was not recognized outside Syria and Egypt. This was because Iraq and Arabia recognized Abdullah as the genuine Caliph. Remember, Abdullah and Hussein, who were against Yazid. Now, in Syria and Egypt, they recognized, in Iraq and Arabia, they recognized Abdullah as the genuine Caliph. So the uprising in Kufa follows the death of Hussein. There was an uprising in Kufa which happened after the death of Hussein, and this transformed the Shia from the political party into a religious sect. So you've seen two sects. There is the Shia and the Shiite. Now we see that Hussein, who was contradicting Yazid, is gone, and Abdullah is recognized to be a caliph in Iraq and Arabia. So the leadership of this cause fell to Muqtar of Taif, who proclaimed himself as the ambassador of Muhammad bin Hanifiya, who, though not a direct descendant of Ali, was selected as the only available adult from the side of Ali. The survivor of the massacre of Kebala, and the only adult from the side of Ali to succeed. Muqtar's message propounded the cause of the house of Ali for the caliphate. So his message got the ears of the non-Arab Muslims, who resented their inferior status and the arrogance of the Arab rulers. Now you see here the issue about the caliphate is still going on. Here we see different individuals fighting for the caliphate. They are fighting to lead. Where we see that it is starting with this, the Second War, where different individuals come up and try to lead, but in their struggle we see that there are massacres, there are battles, and people are dying. So the issue about the caliphate was not solved in the period of the first four caliphates. It is still going on. So the struggle of power between the various contestants, that is Abd al-Malik and Abdullah and Muqtar, turned Iraq into a battlefield. Now there was war in Iraq because of this individual, Abdullah and Muqtar. They're fighting over the contentious issue about the caliphate. Abd Malik attempts to gain control of this area, but he's not successful. Remember, this area also was attempted. There was an attempt from Mukhtar who tried to lead it also, but he was not successful. So the war that rose led to the death of Mukhtar and his chief supporters. Another person who wanted to be a caliph, he is gone because of the contentious issue of the caliphate. Now there is the caliph who is called Suleiman. Suleiman succeeds his brother Al-Walid. So he built in Palestine the ruins of a more ancient town, the city of Al-Ramallah, that made his residence. So he took part, he reigned on the side of the Palestine. So the minaret of his white mosque, which was the third holiest shrine of Syria, after the Mosque of Damascus and the Dome of the Rock, built by the Mamluks in the 14th century, still stands. Up to today, his minaret of his white mosque still stands, and people are still going there for prayers. Isham is another individual during the reign of the Umayyad Dynasty, and with him came the end of the golden age of the Umayyad. So the Abbasids, Khorassans, and the Shia all together, they put pressure on the Umayyads through various rebellious battles or revolts, and eventually brought the Umayyad dynasty to its knees. So the Umayyad dynasty lasted for 90 years. And during those 90 years, we see 13 rulers who fight for the various regions so that they can be caliphs. So during the reign of the Umayyad dynasty, we see a rule of 90 years, and where we have like 13 rulers who, some of them died because they were massacred, and some of them gloriously ruled. So though the Umayyads are rated for the expansion of Muslim dominions, their reign witnessed the conversion of the Islamic polity into a hereditary monarchy, where we see that there was the issue of heredity. For you to leave your caliph, you had to leave it for your son. So this reign of the Umayyad witnessed the development of the sectarianism in Islam. It witnessed the development of sectarianism. Here we have different groups coming up and stating that they are the true believers of Islam. We have the Shia, there is the Shiite, who believe that, who had their own beliefs. So we have some keywords here. Mahdi, the rightly guided, a kind of messianic figure who believed will come at the end of time to establish justice and rule of God on earth. And then the belief, which is very strong among the Shia Muslims, Mawalis. The Mawalis are the Shia Muslims are the new Muslims or the Arabic converts of Islam, who are invariably Persians, and we see that they too had their own sect. So you can comment on various issues. There is the analysis of the rise of the Umayyad to power and the role played by different individuals who witnessed during the reign of the Abbasid Umayyad Dynasty. There is Muawiyah, Abdul al-Malik, and his sons in the expansion of the Umayyad Dynasty. Also, we have some individuals like Hussein and also Abdallah Yazid. There is the Umayyad the second, who in their own capacity had achieved or also defeated in various contests. Now, during the reign of the Umayyads, they had a very administrative machinery, and this machinery helped them to have a grip on the Muslim empire for close to 90 years. So they were very strong to lead for those years. They had a very strong administrative machinery. But we have an envy here that in spite of all of its Islamic character, the Umayyad society was based upon the creation and perpetuation of the Arab aristocracy with hereditary social castes. There was the issue of secretarianism and also the issue of hereditary issue, where we see that some of the caliphs tried to leave their the caliphate to their sons, and during this reign you can say that there was the issue of secretarianism, the issue of splitting because of this issue of hereditary social caste. Now, the Arabs were the heart of the Umayyad powerful military machine, and they are also the source of their power and security. So centralization and militarization of the state led to increased autocratic and absolute government, which supported and was protected by the Arab aristocracy. That is about the Umayyad dynasty and the Arab machineries. Now, during the reign of the Umayyad, to incorporate some of the foreign institutions and practices in their administration, and some of these functions or foreign institutions included being there was a market inspector, the Byzantine institution. So the Umayyad adopted this institution by expanding the office through adding the Islamic dimension, in which the religious or moral principles of Islam were to be observed. That despite borrowing this market inspector as a foreign institution, they tried to propagate or to add some of the Islamic dimensions so that it can enhance the principles of Islam which were to be observed. The market supervisor was a supervisor of public morals, and he checked defective weights, ensured that everything was weighs accordingly. There was no issue of cheating. Also, he was very keen on measures different measures regarding various commodities and various sectors in the market, and also he dealt with fraudulent business practices, and he was very keen in observing public observance of the fasts of Ramadan, among others. That was the work of this office, foreign office, which was incorporated in the Umayyad Dynasty or Umayyad reign. Another sector is the Sharia courts. So by the end of the Umayyad Caliphate, the office of the Qadi had become separate, and there was a distinct government position that of a judge, whereby the judge was supposed to ensure that there was law and law was enforced. That is another section of the foreign institution which the Umayyad borrowed so that they can add to their practices. So during the reign of Muawiyah, there was a regular series of judges who were recruited from the Faqih class, where you find that these judges were learners and scholars in regards to Quran and the traditions. So they were very keen to ensure that the law that was propagated by Prophet Muhammad was enforced. Muawiyah also created a bureau of registry, a kind of state chancery. This is to ensure that everything would run smoothly accordingly. Another sector which was borrowed and was incorporated in the Umayyad era or Umayyad administration was the army. The army was modeled in its organization after that of the Byzantines. The division of the 5 corps, the center, 2 wings, vanguard, and the rear guard was adopted. Where also in their army we saw that they were using these terms in their army. So this plan was continued until the reign of Marwan II. So Marwan II abandoned this old division and introduced the small compact body called cohort. So instead of calling them corps, Marwan called them cohort. Another foreign institution which the Umayyad borrowed was the revenue. The main source of sales revenue remained as they were under the Orthodox Caliphate. So we can say that even in the Umayyad dynasty, they were very connected to the Orthodox Caliphate. So they tried to maintain the main source of state revenue, and chief among them was the tax from the conquered people. So these people were supposed to pay some jizya, some fine for protection. So that was the main source of revenue, where after conquering, those people who were conquered were supposed to pay some fine for protection from the Muslim side. The Umayyad population also was divided into 4 classes. That is another aspect where you see that they borrowed it and tried to incorporate it into their statistics, where we see that the first one was the Arabs. The first class contained only the Arabs, the ruling Muslims, This included people who were coming from the family of the Caliphs and the aristocracy of the Arab conquerors. Very important individuals. And the second social class was the group which was called New Muslims, also called Mawalis, who we looked at them earlier. We said that these were people who were not, they were from outside the Arabs. So they tried to convert themselves into Islam and also propagate Islam all the same. That was the second class, that is the neo-Muslims. The third group is the group which was made up of the tolerated sects which was called Dynasty. This was Jewish, Christians, and the Serbians. These people, since they were conquered, they were supposed to pay something for protection, some fine. So they made the third social class in the Umayyad Empire. And the last one is the class of the slaves. The slaves were the bottom society, where we saw that slaves in the early Islam were recruited from prisoners of war. So after the battles, if you are arrested or if you survive, then you are put in the class of slaves, prisoners of war, women and children. These people were put together after the war, and they were termed to be slaves. So they made the fourth social class of the Umayyad administration, the Umayyad population. So we've looked at the Umayyad Empire, especially looking at its features, the features of the Umayyad administration, that is the market, the judicial, military, revenue, and the population. Those are the features. These were issues, these were foreign institutions that the Umayyads tried to borrow and put into their own administration. And they are called the features of the Umayyad institution or Umayyad administration. So during the reign of the Umayyad dynasty, there were some achievements which were recorded. There are some of the achievements which are recorded during the reign of the Umayyads. And these achievements include the expansion of Islam administration, and there was Arabization, and also construction of the mosques so that the people could have a place where they could go pray, and also construction of work of public utility, and there was intellectual and cultural development. Public oratory was also enhanced, and development of religious philosophical movements. So during the Umayyad dynasty, we see a lot of achievements which are recorded. So Islam became rooted in the lands that had been the cradle of Christianity by by 732, which marked the first centenary of the Prophet's death. we see that Muslims were the masters of an empire greater than that of the Rome. An empire extending from the Bay of Biscay to the Indus and the confines of China, and also from the Aral Sea of the lower cataracts of the Nile. So we see that Islam as a religion has expanded and it is still growing. This was an area comprising southwestern Europe, North Africa, West Central Asia, and the Middle East, where we see that Islam spread uh, up to those regions. Stated that the religion expanded to other parts of the world, where we've seen that it went to the areas of Asia, that is West Central Asia, North Africa, Southwest Africa. That is how this religion spread to those areas, considering the different caliphates that we have discussed in the previous lesson and also in this lesson. I stated that during the reign of the Umayyads, there are so many achievements. There is the expansion of the context, which I have not stated it here. Where we see that it spread up to those areas. And then the administration, another achievement during the Umayyads, where we saw that there was a very big machinery, government machinery that was very large, to a very, it was very large, and this also helped them to conquer many parts of those regions that we've seen the religion expanding to. And we've seen that during the different caliphates, the issue of the tax, where we see that after every battle, there was a fine which was given to those people who were very reluctant to convert to Islam, and in this way, we see that these tax help them to reinforce different aspects of their administration. Arabization under the Umayyads, especially the reign of Abd al-Malik, we will look later, Arabic became the official language of the government, and the administration of Iraq was Arabicized in 697, and we see that the language is used and replaced by Arabic coins, stamped by phrases which are quotes from the Quran. That explains the issue about the Arabicization. And also we looked at the construction of different mosques during the Umayyad reign, where we see that Abdul al-Malik is a very successful caliph during the Umayyad dynasty. He built a very magnificent dome of the rock in Jerusalem. The dome also is now a very prominent aspect, where we see that it's a symbol of Islamic faith in that region. It is one of the earliest monuments surviving, also up to date. Abd Malik also erected many monasteries, and also he was able to construct very large mosques that would help in the spread of Islam. And culture and intellectual development was another achievement during the Umayyad reign, where we clearly see that the Basra, the scientific study of the Arabic language and the grammar, was started. And then, apart from sponsoring the study of Arabic, the Umayyads preside over the they sponsored the systemization of law, the issues about Sharia, and they built different schools. The study of Quran and Hadith also was very supported. The foundation of theology and fiqh, where we see that Abu Hanifa, the founder of Hanifa school, one of the four schools of Sunni law, lived during the tail end of the Umayyad dynasty, and he was also able to propagate the issues of Islam. The study of the Quran and the need to expound it gave rise to philology, that is the study of development of a language, philology, and lexicography, that is the dictionary compiling and the science of hadith. This explained the intellectual development during the Umayyad dynasty. Arabic historiography began at the time of the Umayyads. During that reign, we see that they started to look at the forms of traditions, that is the different hadiths, and also the interest in gathering all stories about the Prophet, how or what the Prophet said and what he told his companions, basing on the different hadiths that he had, and also different revelation that he had from Prophet, from Angel Gabriel. Also, when we base on intellectual development during this period, those who sought education secured it in the mosques that they patronized. So education in the mosques centered on the Quran and the Hadith. The earliest readers during this time were the Quran readers. So in the mosque, they were able to development during the Umayyad reign, where we've looked at the issues dealing with scientific study of Arabic, and we looked at about the issue of education in the mosques, and we're looking at now the greatest intellectual measure of progress during the Umayyad dynasty was the area of the poetical composition, where Arabic lyrics were used to make poems and made them look very appealing, and this made the Umayyad dynasty have a very creative lot of individuals during that reign. So those are specific intellectual and cultural development during the Umayyad dynasty. Another achievement is public speaking oratory. The art of the public speaking was very much cultivated during the Umayyad period, and it was used as an instrument during the Friday prayers and sermons. So in general, the imams were very keen in ensuring that whatever they were teaching the public or the adherents of the Islam were of a very high nature. That is why we see that public speaking is another achievement during the Umayyad period. Another achievement during the Umayyad period is the development of philosophical movements, where we see the people, the movements like Mutazilites, which is the school of theology, was founded, and these people flourished very well during the Abbasid, that is the reign after the Umayyad Dynasty. So we will look at them later. This period also witnessed the development of sects, where we saw the issue of Shiites, the Kharijites, the Mujitis, who were groups which came out of the Islam groups, and they had their own foundation and their own ideologies which they propagated. So Greek philosophical ideas found their way into Islam during the era of the Umayyads, and we can say that during this period there is a list of theologians, orators, fathers of the Byzantine music, codifiers, and much more individuals who came out and showcased their work during this era of Islam, during the era of the Umayyad dynasty. Those are some of the achievements that were witnessed during the Umayyad dynasty, and these achievements are evident in the areas which I've already mentioned. I've mentioned the issue of administration, construction of mosques. We've looked at the expansion of Islam culture, in the intellectual development, oratory, public speaking, and the development of religio-philosophical movements, where we see individuals who have various ideologies on religion, and they stand on Islam as a religion. That is all about the Abbasid. About the Umayyad. We've looked at the achievement. Now we can move on and look at the fall of the Umayyads. That as they were flourishing, they also had their own shortcomings and they had challenges. Now let us look at the decline and the fall of the Umayyads. Having discussed the achievements, we can trace now the decline and assess the reasons for this decline and the eventual fall of this group, that is the Umayyad dynasty. What was the reason for the fall of the Umayyad dynasty? Now, the Arab tribes traced their descent from either Adnan, or Katman. Adnan was the forefather of the northern Arabs, while Khatan was the father from the southern part of the Arab, and you find that most times these two groups were colliding, and many of them migrated towards and settled in Syria. Among them were the Gulfs, who were being held function, so their name was the rallying cry for their party. That is one reason why we see the fall of Umayyads. Their rivalry was ancient and endemic, and with the coming of Islam, it made the issues worse. Earlier, before Islam, the people from the northern Arab and the southern Arab were rivals. Now, when Islam comes, it makes the matter worse, because each and every group wants to have their own stand and have their own place in Islam. And this, as we see, during the reign of Al-Walid, the Gayside power was at peak, and we see that the polarization of the empire into the Arab dualism, that is of the north and the south, it led to conflicts, which eventually led to the fall of the Umayyad Dynasty. That is one reason why the fall of or the decline of the Umayyad Dynasty came about. The second one was the succession problem. The lack of definite and fixed rule of hereditary succession to the caliphate caused national disturbances.
You are currently the only person in this conference.
Who are trying to go against Yazid, that is the son of Muawiyah. And now the issue of Muawiyah nominating his son also made a very bad impact as far as the issue of the caliphate was concerned, because you see Abdullah and Hussein fighting, and eventually you see Hussein dying and Abdullah winning on the side of Arabia. These are Muawiyah, Yazid, Marwan, and Abdul. So Muawiyah designated his son Yazid. Marwan designated his son Abdul al-Malik. And we see that this precedent complicated an already complicated problem, where we see that a caliph trying to impose his son to be his heir or his successor. And also there is the issue of the caliphate. Now, the problem, this problem of leaving the caliphate to the son complicated the issue about the succession of the caliphate. So these maneuvers could not argue well with the stability and continuity of the dynasty, where we see that there were revolts, there were massacres, and this eventually led to the end of or decline of the Umayyad dynasty. Another reason is the Shiites. The Shiites, that is the group which came especially from the family of Ali and Hussein. So we see that the Shiites became the focus of public sympathy, and all those who politically, socially, and even economically discontented with the Umayyads, they went to the camp of the Shiites. And this clearly culminated to the decline of the Umayyad dynasty. Another reason is the Abbasid claimants. The Abbasids were descendants of an uncle of Prophet Al-Abbas ibn Dala Muttalib. So this group pressed their claim to the throne and made a common cause with the elites by emphasizing that the rights of the house of Hashim. Now, the Abbasids regarded themselves closer to the Prophet than the Umayyads. Remember when Prophet Muhammad came out and said that he was receiving revelation, he was being visited by Angel Gabriel. There were this group from the Umayyad, that is from the Qurayshi tribe, who were stating that that was a lie. And also they eventually made the Prophet to move from his motherland to Yathrib, where we see there is a hijrah. So we can say that the Abbasid came and took advantage of the widespread discontent and posed as defenders of the true faith, where they saw that there was a line or there was a problem, and then they came to take advantage of that thing, of that discontent, and this led to an anti-Umayyad cause. which eventually led to the decline of the Umayyad dynasty. The Khorasanians, the non-Arab Muslims, that is the Mawalis and the Persians in particular, were dissatisfied with the Umayyad because they were not accorded economic and social equality like the Arab counterparts. So at these times, they were being overtaxed, and also they were being levied on heavily than the Arab counterparts. So among the Mawalis, the doctrines of the Shiites spread like a wildfire. So we see that their contribution, that is their discontent with the Umayyads regarding the issue of levies and taxes, eventually led to the discontentment, where we see that they supported the Shiites and also made a very wide group which supported the doctrine of the Shiites, eventually leading to the decline of this Umayyad dynasty. So with the fall of the Marwa, Kufa, the leading city of the Iraq, fell to the insurgents in 749, where we see Al-Abbas, a great-grandson of Al-Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet, declared the first Abbasid Caliph at Kufa, where it is in 749. Now, after all this discontentment from the Qurayshans, that is the non-Arab Muslims, the Abbasid reclaimants, this led to an anti-Umayyad force, which culminated or added to the decline of the Umayyad dynasty. So we've just summarized the reasons why the Umayyad dynasty declined, eventually leading to its end. We can clearly discuss them if given an opportunity, that the discontentment, the proliferation of different sects, and the Abbasid claimants taking advantage of the discontentment that exists. These are some of the reasons that led to the decline and fall of the Abbasid, of the Umayyad dynasty. Having discussed that, can clearly discuss the reasons for the fall of the Umayyad dynasty. You can clearly list the factors that contributed to the fall of this dynasty in 750 CE. The dynasty, when we are looking at the issue of the caliphate, we are looking at the very important periods of Islamic history. That is the period of the first four caliphs, and then the period of the Abbasid of the Umayyad dynasty, eventually leading to the Abbasid dynasty, that is 750 to 1258 CE, where we see that after the fall of the Umayyads, there was these Abbasids who came, and they are descendants of Al-Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet. So they came to power, and we will look at the rise of the Abbasids to power and how various caliphs during the Abbasid reign consolidated the rule after the fall of the Umayyads. Now, with the declaration of the first Abbasid Caliph, the rebels and the fugitives of the Umayyads were tracked down and annihilated one by one. So Marwan II was killed in Egypt. The remains of the caliphs in Damascus and other places were exhumed by Abdallah. Remember Abdallah? the individual who was against Yazid, the uncle of the nephew, Caliph, and this created the couple. Now, the corpses which were collected after the massacre in Damascus were burnt in a single place of Umar II. Abdallah executed 80 Umayyad princes. This prince who had been invited to a banquet by this new caliph, and that is where they were killed. Very few escaped this slaughter. There was this grandson of Caliph Hisham who ran away, and he was saved during this time. So we see that when the ruler came, he was very cruel, and he tried to annihilate everyone who was supporting the Umayyad or was coming from the Umayyad side. Now, with the fall of the Umayyads, the glory of the Syria passed away, and its hegemony ended. Now, its era ended. The Arab period in the history of Islam ended, and the Abbasids established a new era, which created capital Baghdad to be the seat or the central place of the Abbasids. Now, the Abbasid administration was to be based on the true principles of Muslim piety, religion, and not race was to be the foundation of this state. The Caliphs in time styled themselves as shadows of God on earth, and they added titles which express moral or religious qualities. For example, Al-Mahid, that is one of the Caliph, was called the Guided One. Al-Rashid, the Orthodox One. Al-Mutalimid, he who supports God, and Al-Mutawakkil, he who trusts in God. So these caliphs in the Abbasid administration tried to link themselves. Reasons why the Umayyad Caliph, the Umayyad dynasty, the Umayyad dynasty did not succeed. It declined, and eventually it failed. Muawiyah, there was this issue of the succession problem, which I've already discussed, where we see that a caliph wants that his son takes over from him whenever he has left. And this did not go on, did not do very well with some of the individuals, and is another reason for the Umayyads' decline. The Shiites also, this is the Shiites, a group from the Islamic religion, where they were sympathizing with those people who were, they were sympathizing with the individuals who felt that they were wrong, they were wronged, and especially with the issue of the martyrdom of Hussein, an individual who was against Yazid together with Abdallah. And Umayyads were accused of hardiness and neglecting the Quranic and the Sharia, according to the Shiites. And also this is another reason for the end or decline of the Umayyad dynasty. I've talked also about the issue of the Abbasid claimants, the sympathizers who took advantage of the widespread discontent posed by the defenders of the true faith, that is the Shiites. They said, they stated that the Abbasids stated that they were very close to the Prophet and rather than the Umayyads. And I was talking about the issue of the Prophet, talking about the revelations and the different dreams that he had, and we find that he was opposed by the Umayyads. as we discussed in our first lesson, these people are against the Prophet. Now, the Abbasids are stating that they are closer to the Prophet regarding that issue, and also this is a reason which made or contributed to the decline of the Umayyad dynasty. I've already discussed about the Khorasanians. These were the non-Arab Muslims who thought that they were being treated otherwise by the Umayyads, unlike the Arab counterparts. They were stating that they were being overtaxed on the issue of taxes and the levies. They were being discriminated against compared to the Arab counterparts. So they, they, these made them form a coalition or come together and have a very strong collaboration with the Shiites and the Abbasid forces, that is the Abbasid claimants, which contributed to the decline of the Abbasid, of the Umayyad dynasty. Abu al-Abbas, who reigned between 750 to 754, when we are looking about the Abbasid dynasty, was the first Abbasid Caliph who took over from Al-Safa. Al-Safa was not wholly recognized as a Caliph in Spain, North Africa, Oman, Sind, and Khorasan. So when he died, that's when Al-Safa died of smallpox. He was succeeded by his brother Abu Jafar, who took the title Al-Manusr. And this Al-Manusr also, that is the brother of Al-Rafat, he consolidated the Muslim empire once more after the downfall of the Umayyads. So he defeated Abdullah bin Abbas in 754. His uncle, who was the governor of Syria under the reign of Al-Safa. Abdullah disputed Al-Mansura accession to the Caliphate. Now I think they fought, or they had the battle, and later he defeated Abdullah. So a revolt instigated by the Persian extremists in 758 to God in 760 died in 775 near Mecca while on pilgrimage to Muslims go for pilgrimage in Mecca. So he died on his way to pilgrimage near Mecca. These are some of the caliphs under the Abbasid dynasty, and you can see that they've tried to fight their way up. And we also see the issue of the contentious issue about the caliphate is still experienced, where we see that an individual does not want another one to reign, and there is an issue of the revolts, massacres, and wars and battles. So in general, we can say that the issue about the caliphate is ongoing. To 785. This reign reached its peak at the reign of Al-Mahdi. And we see so much improvement during this reign. He was the first Abbasid Caliph to resume expeditions from the Byzantines. Harun, his future successor, distinguished himself during the expeditions that made him a very honorific title, Al-Rashid, from his father. And Harun al-Rashid, the most brilliant period of the Abbasid, is placed during the reign of Harun al-Rashid. The era of the Abbasid dynasty, we've looked at the era of Abu al-Abbas and then al-Mansur, which later we see that al-Mahdi took over, where we see that he had an expedition. And during this expedition, we say that Harun al-Rashid, who is the successor of al-Mahdi, was given a very prestigious title, like that is al-Rashid, follower of the right path, by his father al-Mahdi. Now, during the reign of Harun al-Rashid, we see a very prosperous era, where when he ascended the throne in 784, Harun appointed Yahya bin Khalid, his former teacher, as his companion. And then we see a very successful era during this era of Harun al-Rashid, where it mainly annexes for harems and special functionaries. It was a great commercial center. There was a very commercial center that he had, that is the Baghdad city, with no peer through our world. So during the era of Harun al-Rashid is a very prosperous period in the Abbasid dynasty. Al-Mamun, unlike the Umayyads who promoted the superiority of the Arab race, the Abbasids stressed on principles of religion and piety as opposed to race. So it is evident that the Abbasid period witnessed a lot of Persian influence on Muslim life. Consequently, historians have described the coming to power of the Abbasids as the victory of the Persians over the Arabs, because we see that those people, that the neo-Muslims, that is the non-Arab Muslims, were given part in the Abbasid dynasty, and they were able to lead and even be treated very well, unlike in the Umayyad dynasty, where they were overtaxed and also they were discriminated against. This is a summary of the Abbasid dynasty, and we've seen that there were different caliphs that were designated. So we've analyzed the rise of the Abbasids and the consolidation of the Abbasid power by various rulers, which I believe you as a student will be able to mention some of them. So unlike the Umayyads who promoted the superiority of the Arab race, the Abbasids stressed on the principle of religion. They stressed on the issue of the religion and piety as opposed to race, which I've already mentioned here. They stressed on religion. Consequently, we said that historians view this era, that is the Abbasid dynasty, as the victory of the Persian Arab, victory of the Persians over the Arabs, because they got a chance to be added into the reign and even be treated equally like the others, unlike in the Umayyad dynasty, where they were treated contrary to how they were expecting. Now, this is an overview about this issue of the caliphate, and we've looked at how the issue of the contagious caliph the contentious issue of the caliphate was solved, and we've looked at very important periods of the Islamic history, and I believe that you'll be able to discuss them in the exam whenever you'll be given a chance. Thank you so much for your time, and I believe that in the next class we'll be able to discuss more about the administration under the Abbasids, where we'll be looking at how they were running their administration moving forward according to the course outlines that I provided to you. Thank you so much and have a nice time.